I really think that purpose, meaning, fulfillment, happiness, whatever term you want to use for it, like what everybody is ultimately looking for at the end of the day. Um, I think a lot of it is to be found in responsibility and cleaning up your little corner of the world. I think a lot of people, I think it's very rare that this one thing, like a career or like a job or something, just manifests itself to you, and you're like, oh, this is what I'm going to do with the rest of my life.
Welcome to Iron Summit, where we cover topics about health, fitness, and general performance through the eyes of former elite Division I wrestlers. Today on Iron Summit, we have one of my favorite young men, a gentleman named Logan Stern. Logan is an elite powerlifter competing on the collegiate level right now. Most recently, what was it, like a year ago, Logan, you totaled 1,606 pounds. Meet coming up soon here. We'll get into kind of targets and how you're training for that. Logan is studying business management at Clemson University. Logan is an Iron Summit athlete, follows an Iron Summit diet program. And honestly, like I said, one of my favorite young men. I think a lot of young people could learn to be more like Logan, and the world would be a better place. So Logan, it's great to have you on.
Thank you for those kind words. That means a lot.
No, it's the truth. So I met Logan. Logan came out to Colorado on a family trip and got some training in at our gym. And immediately a new Logan carried himself in a unique manner, trains hard, is a good young man, was super interested in the professional world. But what really caught my eye, let's be honest, is how strong he was. He was moving some big weight at our gym.
Dude, Max, you gotta stop getting these guys that are so much stronger than me on the podcast, dude. It's like, it's crazy. He throws up these numbers. I'm like, what the heck is going on? This is like not normal. That's a crazy amount of weight.
It's the college cafeteria food. I'm telling you, man. What's up?
Yeah, I'm sure that's it. So what are you currently training for, Logan?
So right now I'm actually about 4 weeks out exactly from collegiate nationals in Atlanta. That's the number one target at the moment.
Awesome. And how are you training right now? Like, what's your current split? What's your frequency? Kind of take us through what you're doing right now, getting ready for that. Because for those who don't know powerlifting, a lot of our listeners don't know, the last like 4 weeks, really the last like couple months of a powerlifting prep are very specific training, but really given these last 4 weeks, and it's really interesting training too. It's not kind of typical. You don't just go in and lift. There's a very specific plan.
Yeah. Like you said, it's hyper specialized, especially in the last 4 weeks. And I'm lucky enough to have a coach, Mr. Matt Cronin. We've only been working together for a couple months now, but he's really been able to learn how I respond to training really well. And right at the moment, he's got me squatting twice a week, deadlifting twice a week, and benching 3 times a week. And it's been good. It's less volume than I've done in the past, and I've been responding pretty well to it. But yeah, we're just couple heavy lifts, or couple heavy sets in the latter half of the week. In the beginning of the week, it's usually a little bit lighter, a little bit more volume relative to powerlifting. So like 5 to 6 reps, rarely exceeding that. But yeah, honestly, just been grateful that my body's held up so far. Usually in most preps, I end up getting pretty beat up and I'm hobbling onto the platform on meet day. But so far, knock on wood, we haven't come across that issue too much.
So how far do you spread out those days? Like, you're squatting twice a week, deadlifting twice a week. How do you stagger those?
Take us through a squat. It's like a week schedule.
Yeah, so like today was my my secondary squat day, although it's the first day in the week that I'm going to train. So I hit my I had squat, bench, and deadlift today. On Wednesday, I'll come back in and hit bench again for a little bit. That's kind of like my secondary bench day. Today being my tertiary or my volume day. Thursday, I'll come in and do my primary squats. I'm only squatting that day. Friday, rest day. Saturday, I'll come in, and that is primary deadlift and primary bench. So training 4 days a week, Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, Saturday, and really making a point on those off days to just not do nothing, but get in lots of steps. I know that's something Max has just pushed me to do. get in lots of steps, do body work, rolling out. If I'm going to see my PT, it's usually on one of those days, and just trying to take care of my body and make sure I'm good to go for the next training day. It's definitely been something that over the years I've focused more on. When I first started, I was like, let me train as many days as possible. And, just I feel like coming from, I don't know how it is with wrestling, but like with basketball and football, your results on the court or on the field are like directly proportional to how much skill work you put in the gym. And you don't really focus as much on recovery, although I'd argue now it's probably more important. But coming to powerlifting, I was adopting that same mindset, and it didn't pay off as much as it did when I was playing those sports in high school. But now that I've taken more time to focus on just eating right and definitely sleeping right, and getting those steps in, it's paid dividends, and I made a lot more progress.
Yeah, you're speaking our language. Recovery, we harp on recovery all the time. I think it's Ryan and I talk about it. It's one of the most underrated aspects of training, and particularly in powerlifting. I mean, it's immensely important.
The episode that you guys did, one of the pillars, it was the recovery one. I got a lot out of that episode, and I think that's I really think people underestimate how important sleep is. Like, if people could just get their sleep right, I think that they could just see dividends of improvement in their performance in the gym.
Yeah, sleep is the most important PED.
Yeah, absolutely.
Especially in college too. It's crazy, like some of the length that I've gone through. You can ask I've been living with one of the same guys for 3 years now. I remember our freshman year, we were living in a dorm with like communal bathrooms. Even then, that was when I first started taking powerlifting seriously. I'd cut my water intake off at about 8 p.m. so I wouldn't have to get up and walk down the hall with all the bright lights. Eye mask for sure, earplugs, and telling him like, hey man, when you come back, be like as quiet as possible, because he was usually out before, out and about doing stuff when I was asleep. He's been great over the years, just accommodating my diva needs as a powerlifter.
But, no, I love it. How did you get into powerlifting? You said you kind of started early college, or what? Like, obviously you played football and basketball growing up.
So what actually got me into powerlifting was my brother. Growing up, I lifted for sports and stuff. But during my senior year, I went to this gym across the street from my high school that had been there for a few years, always seen it. I didn't know anything about lifting realistically at the time. But my brother actually went before me, and he was 3 years younger than me. And we had always lifted together and stuff. But he went in there and he was like, you got to come check this place out. It's like a hardcore like powerlifting gym. I was like, I don't even know what powerlifting is, but I'll go look at it. Walked in and met the owner, Heather Foz. She ended up being my first coach. I was there for about a week, maxed out on everything. I think my first maxes were 340 squat, 220 bench, and 385 deadlift. And she told me, she was like, you should really like consider doing powerlifting. And that was all I needed, was that one little positive affirmation. And I ran with it, and I've been doing it since then. And, she's kind of been like a second mom to me. I just came from her gym today. And that was how I got started, just walking into a gym, not knowing anything.
That's awesome. And then since then, I want to come back to your brother, but since then you've been powerlifting throughout college. Is definitely, with how seriously you take it, that's not the typical college experience. So talk about that a little bit, because I think it's cool to do something unique in college and push yourself in a different way than a lot of college kids do.
Yeah, it's definitely powerlifting is unique, because I mean, if you're a football player or a basketball player and you take your sport really seriously, people can kind of like understand why. It's like, hey, you're getting thousands of people watching you, you're probably getting paid for it now. But with powerlifting, it's like, why are you taking it seriously, dude? You're not making any money off of this. It's like, so it's hard to justify to people, but it is, if you really want to take it seriously and compete at the top levels, you have to do the necessary things that any other, professional athlete would do. Definitely sacrificing going out, which for me is not a huge thing, because that's not really my scene to begin with. So it's honestly more of an excuse most of the time. I got to get my, but just making a point to like, telling people, hey, like I can't go out. I got to be in bed by this time. Definitely no alcohol or limiting alcohol. I think Andrew Huberman's done a really great job of getting people aware of how bad that is, especially for for athletes or people that are concerned about their health at all. So those are definitely two of the things that I have to say no to that a lot of other college students are usually partaking in. And the other main thing that's kind of difficult, especially for me, and I know Max and I have talked about this, is the food. A lot of the food places, especially Clemson University, it's a college town. Like there's nothing else there. You got to go about 30 minutes to Greenville to see anything else. But everything that's downtown, it's like bars and like dives and just kind of like traditional bar food. So it's like got to be when people want to go out to eat, you got to. I'm looking up the menu in advance, being like, all right, what can I eat here that's not going to throw me off my plan too much? But yeah, those are definitely some of the things that are that you got to be mindful of, at least as a power lifter in college.
For sure. Yeah, you're speaking to wrestlers here, so we get a lot of work for not much glory.
No, it's cool though, and it's like a worthwhile pursuit. And I think there's something that's cool about the fact that not that you can like shut it off with other sports, but something like powerlifting, something like wrestling, or anything that you're making weight in a sport, it's like 24/7 because your choices are going to directly impact your ability. So with the food aspect, kind of what weight class are you competing in, and then where are you at currently, and how does that was that kind of hard the first time you went through, or did you go through like a cut for your first competition, or take us through how you think about that?
Yeah. Okay. Can't shed too much light on my current weight for my competitors.
Okay. All right.
I'm just kidding. So I competed the 110 kg. It's 242 pounds. It's like the second or third heaviest weight class for USA powerlifting, at least. Right now, this morning, I think I woke up at 249.6, and my goal is to get down to 246 and then water cut the rest of the way. This will be my first time actually doing a water cut. I'm a little bit nervous for it, but I know like 4-pound water cut, y'all are like, that's
nothing.
Yeah.
You'll be just fine.
You know, like 2-hour weigh-ins for wrestling too, right?
Yeah, it's same day weigh-ins. Now it's 2 hours, right, Ryan? But it used to be 1 hour.
Yeah, technically it's 2 hours now. You could do 1 hour if both teams agreed on it for a duel, but tournaments are 2. But yeah, when Max and I were wrestling, it was 1 hour for duels. So it was like touch weight, fuel up, wrestle,
go.
That's crazy. I'm like, oh my gosh. I hear horror stories of people just water cutting 8 pounds for powerlifting and then not being able to recomp enough to step back on the platform and perform.
But at your size, man, you're like, your body's like what, 70% water? And at your size, that's like, I mean, you could walk around and then, take a crap and make weight, like that's.
No, you're right. That's what my coach told me too. And I was like, oh, I'm a little nervous. He was like, dude, it's 4 pounds of water. Even if you don't right now, you'll be fine. But
I think, I mean, if your coach is experienced in it, then just do what he says. But I bet you could do a water cut where you don't even need to work out. You just like cut your sodium, drink a bunch of distilled water, eat some asparagus, like some natural diuretics, and you'll be on weight. It's amazing how fast it comes off, especially at our size. So you're gonna kill it. You'll do it easy.
I'm glad to hear that. That definitely makes me a little bit less nervous about it. But yeah, in the past, I've always just calorie restriction up until meet day. Usually my goal is always 1 pound per week. I don't want to exceed that because I feel like you lose a little bit of your ability to perform in training if you drop lower than that. But right now, and especially talking with Matt, a big thing he didn't want me to do was go into this final block that I started today, cutting any more weight, just because the opportunity to kind of have that extra weight on you when you step on the platform is more advantageous than not having to worry about it and calorie restricting those final 4 weeks.
When are weigh-ins? Like how much time do you have between weigh-ins and your competition?
It's supposed to be 2-hour weigh-ins, but depending on like being a heavier guy, I'm probably not going to compete until like the end of the session. Yeah. So, I'll probably have like 2.5 hours to recomp.
Dude, rehydration is so quick. Grab a Pedialyte or something, get some sodium. It'll be so easy. You'll feel so much stronger training up to it. That'll be good.
Yeah. And then you'll be 246, 249 by the time you step on the platform.
Yeah. All right. Listen to y'all tell me about this makes me feel a little bit better about it.
Dude,
I'm a little for it, but
there's a lot of 125 pounders in college that are probably weighing 240 throughout the week, and then probably
140.
or 140
Yeah.
throughout the week, making 125, and so they'll cut,
Yeah.
I don't know, 10 pounds day before or whatever in a couple workouts and
Oh
then
yeah.
compete, an hour, 2 hours later. So yeah, at your size, you'll feel great.
You'll do great. Yeah, Ryan, what'd you walk around at for 57?
Honestly, I would stay pretty lean, but I'd try to be 6 to 10 pounds over day before, get it off in 2 workouts, and then touch weight, and right after, I'd have probably 6 to 8 pounds of water and food, and then go wrestle and try not to throw up.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
I can't imagine rolling around on the floor after eating all of that.
That's a lot. Yeah. No, you'll do great. And I think, if you have a good coach guiding you, especially if you haven't done a water cut before, you'll kill it. Which is that's another thing to touch on quickly, is just the importance of coaching in powerlifting, because it's so hard. I think even for an elite powerlifter to have a coach that's not themselves, because it's so hard to be completely objective with yourself. I know I work with a great coach. You work with a great coach. You've got to work with several great coaches. So talk to us a little bit about why you think that's so important.
Yeah, I every person I meet who's starting off in powerlifting, the first thing I always tell them is, you can get by maybe running like a template program that you can find from a great coach. But if you want to take the sport seriously at all, you're really going to need to hire a coach who knows what they're doing. Like you said, Max, it's hard to keep yourself accountable, especially if you're using something like a RPE scale, which is essentially just judging how difficult a set
I
was.
suck at that. I really suck.
Yeah, I think every powerlifter does, and that's why we all need a coach. Like even this block, my coach told me, he's like, dude, you've been overshooting your bench quite a bit. But to me, I'm like, all right, I thought I was kind of close, but no, he's right. That's it. Ended up missing a set on my final week, and I was like, I guess you were right, Matt. I was a little bit too overconfident in those sets, but having somebody who knows what they're doing and can adjust to you and your body throughout the program, I think is really good. And I think that's another thing when people start off. I was actually talking with my old coach about this today. It's when you start working with a coach, I think you have to give them at least, 3 to 6 months to kind of learn you and what works for you. And it could be even longer than that, because a lot of powerlifters, when they first start working with a coach, won't communicate with them and be like, hey, this amount of bench is absolutely killing my shoulder. Like maybe could we try moving this day to that? Some people won't say that. They'll just sit and suffer through it and think that they're, just grinding their teeth and working hard. But in reality, it could be setting them back. It could be setting them up to get an injury. So I think communicating with your coach is huge, especially when you're starting off. I know Matt and I, like I said, we've only been working together for 3 months, but we've done a really good job of communicating and figuring out what works best for me on a short amount of time. But I don't think that if you want to take powerlifting seriously and be an elite competitor in it, you should definitely hire a coach and do your research on them. And I could talk a little bit about what I think makes a good coach.
Yeah, do it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'd love to hear that.
Yeah, I think it's hard to find good coaches in powerlifting. I'd say that there's a lot of well-intentioned people. I should really be careful with what I say here, depending on who ends up doing this. But I've been really to work with my original coach. She was great. I ended up switching coaches, not because there was anything wrong with her program or anything. I just wanted to change things up. I'd been lifting for 3 years and just kind of wanted to change things. But I think when you're in the market for a coach, to put it bluntly, it's important to look at things like how many of their athletes have they taken from, a 1,200 pound total to like a 1,700 pound total, or have they all just kind of, been beginners, worked with the coach, got through that beginner gain stage, and then kind of, fizzled out from there. Because unfortunately, I think that's what happens with a lot of athletes. And once again, that could go back to just not communicating well with your coach and figuring out what works best for you. I definitely feel like I see that a lot with just people at school and in my gym back at home. But yeah, not being able to communicate is huge with your coach. And that's really where the progress is gonna be made.
So one thing we haven't touched on, I don't think too much on here, Max, but what about, like, I see you got a Whoop on and stuff. What do you think about fitness trackers, and how do you use that to give information to your coach? And what do you think? Like, I see it as a double-edged sword. I think there's some guys, I coach wrestling. I think there's some guys on the team that would benefit from one. And And some guys, it's like they overthink everything. And so if they see, something on the app that says you didn't sleep well today, you're not ready to go, it'd be really detrimental to them.
Yeah.
So how do you use that? And what are your thoughts on, I guess using it in conjunction with your coach as you're training and stuff?
Yeah, it's funny. I was literally listening to a podcast the other day where they were talking about that exact thing. And I always tell people that ask me about it, like, should I get one? I'd say with most fitness trackers, like they're never going to be perfect. I'd say I think Whoop is one of the better ones. I'd say it probably like 75-80% accurate. And sometimes if you've got like if it gives you some data that just seems weird, like sometimes you just got to discard it. But I think if you're using it to track like overall long-term trends regarding like your sleep or your activity, it's probably good. But I definitely think, I've had days where I've woken up and been like, oh my gosh, like I had a 30% recovery today. When I went out to see Max, because it judges your recovery score based on your heart rate variability. So when I'm here in the low country of South Carolina, when I flew out to Boulder, and then went to Vail with Max, where it's like, way higher elevation, my heart rate variability went in half and my recovery was 1% for like 2 days, which is like the lowest it gets. And I was, like, wow, that's a shocker. But I went to the gym and I squatted and deadlifted heavy lifts, pretty intense, and I was fine. Had no issue with it. So I'd say you kind of have to take it with a grain of salt and learn how accurate it is for you and your body. Cool. But yeah, it's been good for me, definitely with the sleep tracker, because I thought I was getting good sleep. And it'll give you, I feel like the readings it gives you regarding like your rapid eye movement sleep, your deep sleep, and your just like time in bed are fairly accurate. I've paid pretty close attention to those, and I think those are good. That's really what I use it for, is tracking my sleep. But there's some days where I'm like, man, I slept, great. Like I feel like I slept for a while, and Whoop's like, yeah, he slept almost enough, but not quite.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's definitely something you can't let it determine your whole day.
Yeah. And I think also it's something Ryan and I have talked about this before. And one of the reasons I found powerlifting so interesting compared to wrestling is like wrestling, you can, it is a high skill sport. And there's like just an aspect of wrestling of being tough. Like that's part of wrestling. So like you can sleep crappy, and then just go like grit it out in a wrestling practice. Whereas like if you have to go squat a certain percent of your max at an RP8, it's got to look like the feedback is so direct in powerlifting. It's much harder to work your way around those things. So I think for powerlifting, the fitness trackers are probably more useful than it is for like a sport like wrestling. And yeah, powerlifting is interesting like that. Like the feedback is so direct.
Yeah,
Like,
that's a great point. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, especially with how I think sleep is especially important for powerlifting because it has such a strong effect on your nervous system. And when so much of your workout is dependent on how the weight just feels on your body, that can have a huge impact on how well your workout goes. Like you said, with the RPE scale, it's like if I slept an extra 2 hours, this might have gone from a 8 to a 7. And that can, determine the course of your whole block. So,
Yep.
Little things, definitely add up. And that's something that I've been focusing on a lot more, and it's been paying off.
Yeah, it's super cool. One of my favorite parts about powerlifting is how direct the feedback is. It's very different coming from a sport where the feedback is not direct. And it kind of goes to your point that you made before, Logan, like in wrestling or any other sport, really, you'd like just hours put in usually equals success. But in powerlifting with that direct feedback, you learn how important recovery is. And I do think doing something similar to powerlifting would be a good endeavor for a lot of athletes, because then you really do learn how important like the recovery or rest or sleep is for performance.
Yeah.
Because it's making a difference in wrestling. It's just not quite as obvious because you can go be tough.
Right.
Yeah.
Like you can't out tough your max squat. Like it's just not going to happen.
I feel like in those sports, like the actual skill of how well you're going to wrestle on the mat is of paramount importance. Whereas in powerlifting, the skill is really in how consistent can you be with everything else. Because everybody can go in the gym and do their program, but very few people are going to come home, eat beef and rice for the 27th time in a row, and then go to sleep at 10 p.m. and not watch an extra episode of Friends. Like
Yeah.
where the
That seemed
that's
oddly specific.
that's that's exactly the point that I'm at in prep right now.
I love
But
it.
that's that's really what separates people in powerlifting, because the skill is only, I mean, it's minuscule, to be 100% honest. Once you learn the technique on all three lifts, you can make micro adjustments and continue to improve, obviously, but you're going to get the most results from just doing the right things every day.
Yep, 100%. All right, so shifting gears a little bit, take us through Strong as Ryan, who your brother was, kind of how that got you into powerlifting, and then how you, how you're moving through it today.
Yeah, so like I said, my brother, when I was a senior in high school, he was a freshman, and he took me across the street to this gym and started, we started powerlifting there after we met the owner. I ended up deciding not to play basketball. That was my main thing in high school. I decided not to play my senior year and just did powerlifting instead because I loved it so much. And that was kind of that. My brother and I had not been like super close. Like it was just the two of us. And we weren't super close growing up, but we were close enough. But once we started powerlifting together, like we were like best friends after that, because our whole day revolved around like, when are we going to the gym? Like, cooking meals together, like, listening to Suicide Boys on the car on the way to the gym, just drinking an absolutely absurd amount of caffeine. Yeah, so we trained together for up until I went off to college. But my brother suffered with really, really bad, really, really severe anxiety and depression. And he turned to drug use, and after a very short battle with drugs, ended up overdosing and passing away almost about 9 months ago. But my brother was very, very strong for his age. He was about, I don't think he ever weighed more than 200 pounds, but when he was 15 years old, he weighed about 170 and benched 315, squatted 500, and deadlifted like 450.
Wow.
That's
He was
insane.
very, very strong. Yeah, he got the better genetics out of the two of us for sure. But yeah, he really struggled with depression and anxiety. Unfortunately, it's in the state that we live in, it's incredibly hard to get help for those kinds of things. It's a hard thing to treat anyway. I have a lot of empathy for, after seeing the doctors and the therapists that he worked with, it's definitely a tough thing for people to try and help somebody with, because we understand so little about it. But he fought really hard with it, and I'm honestly grateful that he didn't have to suffer any longer than he did with it. And I'm glad that he did overcome it for a while. He was sober for about 3 months and just one relapse. And that was the end of it. And that's all it takes, man, to be honest. I've kind of compared it to people, or for people over the years watching him with it. It's like, once you get sober, he went through rehab and came out like a new person. I mean, it was a crazy thing to see. It was somebody that I had never known, somebody that I was like, he went from me and my little brother to, at the time when he went into rehab, I'm like, oh my God, this kid is a shithead. Like, what is he doing with his life? To coming out and being like, oh my God, I want to be like this person. He was doing great. But I tell people, getting clean and staying clean is kind of like equivalent to having the discipline when you want to become a professional athlete. Except, when you're trying to be a pro athlete, it's every day you have to get up and do this checklist of things in order to put yourself in the best position to make it to the top level of whatever you want to do. And if you miss a day, if you miss a couple days, all that happens is you might not get there. You have less of a chance of getting to that point. So the consequences necessarily aren't that huge. Well, from the way I saw it with my brother, when you're a recovering drug addict, you have to have that same amount of discipline every day. But if you ever falter and have a moment of weakness and use again, that could be the end of it. And unfortunately, what happened to my brother. But addiction is a very terrible thing, and it's something that a lot of people struggle with, unfortunately. And I definitely don't want to come on here and pretend like I understand it better than anybody else. But just seeing from my brother's perspective, it's the only real way to prevent it is just to never touch it to begin with, man. I know it gets really, really hard for some people. And if my brother were here today, I guarantee you he would say that he wished he never, and he said it when he got clean. I wish I never touched it to begin with, because
Yeah.
it's the hardest thing that I've ever seen anybody go through. It's been incredibly hard on my family
Yeah.
past, obviously. But it's one of those things that a lot of people deal with. I was fortunate enough to have a great group of people around me to help me get through it. A great group of people that knew my brother really well through powerlifting. Like I said, my old coach, she was like a second mom to the both of us. And she definitely helped him a lot through recovery, and just our whole community, our gym here in South Carolina was just huge for
Yeah.
helping him and then me.
One thing, so I think I met you 2 or 3 months after your brother passed away. One thing that struck me,
About 30 days after.
yeah, a month. Yeah, that's crazy. And one thing that struck me is, one can't imagine what that feels like, having him. There's no words for something like that. But the way you were using it, even at that point, and I've seen you grow in that since then, but you're using it as like a positive force, and you have you use the hashtag on all your training videos, and strong as Ryan. So how have you used kind of the powerlifting and training to cope with some of the difficulty of going through what you did go through?
Yeah, powerlifting's definitely been a huge part of it, and it's also been kind of a tough thing too, being that was what we did together. But honestly, the one thing that I can say goes through my mind in every training session is kind of like what I talked about with having that discipline of not relapsing, staying away, doing the right things. For him, it was going to meetings, going on a walk every morning, doing cold exposure therapy, getting to the gym, going to work. So for me, when I walk in the gym, I'm like, all right, I don't want to do my Bulgarian split squats today. I see that on my program, and I want to put a big fat X next to it and be like, no, I'll hit them next week. But I tell myself, I'm like, if Ryan hadn't slacked off that one day, maybe he'd still be here. It's like, maybe if I do these today, that'll be what gives me the edge. And it's like that with pretty much everything that I don't feel like doing when it comes to getting better. So that's definitely what I think about a lot, just in the gym day to day. And the other thing that I'd say was huge just for getting through even today is just having the community that powerlifting provides. I think that's a huge thing that people don't realize. There's community in a lot of sports. I'm not sure how it is in wrestling. It definitely seems like it's a lot better than it is in a lot of other sports. But, with basketball and football, you hate the person on the other side of the court or field.
Yeah.
Especially with football, you're like, I just want to decapitate this guy. With powerlifting, it's not like that at all. I train right now with one of the main guys who competes against me in our weight class. And we're good friends. Everybody at the gym back at home who technically I would be competing against, it doesn't go that deep. We all want to be the best versions of ourselves, but just having the community in the form of the gym, really in the whole state. I can go up to Greenville, and I have a community up there, powerlifters that know me, that know my situation, that knew my brother. And it's really, there's few things in life I feel like that you can get that kind of support from. And I'm extremely grateful for that.
That's such a cool perspective, man. I think that's such a mature perspective too, just for that happening in the middle of so many life things going on. How long did it take you to get to that perspective? Because I don't know, maybe for you it happened quick, but I could see where that would take me forever, man. To get there, and the way you speak about it now with it still being so fresh is just, I don't know, inspiring, man.
To be honest with you guys, a huge part of the reason I feel like I was able to handle it and not just be completely, I definitely was completely distraught when it happened. But the reason that I wasn't worse off, I guess, was a lot of the stuff that Jordan Peterson has talked about. Actually, I fully attribute the way that I have been able to get through it to him. And like I said, I was supposed to actually be meeting him tonight at his show in Savannah, but it was unfortunately canceled. But just I started listening to Jordan Peterson when I was actually in 8th grade, which is crazy to think about now. But his whole idea of just the meaning of life isn't necessarily pursuing happiness. It's trying to take on the biggest burden that you can, because everybody, and his reason for that is everybody's going to come across tragedy in their life. And if your goal is happiness in that moment, you're kind of lost because you don't really know what to do. But if you can just kind of, take on the burden of existence, as he calls it, and try and do everything you can to just make the situation better for you and the people around you, then there's something fulfilling in that. And I definitely felt like that was what got me through that period of my life, was just being able to be like, hey, like, you can, this is a really shitty point in your life and it's shitty for a lot of other people. But you can help, be there for the people around you, especially like my parents and my other extended family, and just kind of, be a support system for them, do what they need you to do to help get through it. And I'm just grateful to have that mindset from listening to Jordan Peterson for so long. That, and I'm a person of faith as well. And I'm, just not asking like why me or like why him, and just kind of being like, this is part of the plan. If you really trust in it, then you're going to trust in it. So that's just what I've tried to do. And I don't want to make it seem like, I've been some saint throughout the whole thing. And it's just been like, oh, like it's all going to be all right, because there's definitely been times where, I've questioned things and, had broke down in tears for sure. But at the end of the day, like, I've just kind of done my best to try and be there for other people. And it's allowed me to certainly heal through the process a lot. And, you know, just keep going on.
Dude, that's so cool. We used to talk about that a lot in our like team wrestling team Bible study in college. Because it's like, it's easy to be like, yeah, I trust it, God's plan, like God's timing. But it's really easy to say that when you have perspective on something 4 years down the road, or something that's not like this life altering event. But when it's something that serious, to be able to still say that and like keep that perspective is like, I don't know, man. That's inspiring. That's sweet. Like I think you might not ever know the reason, but like to be able to trust that there's a reason behind it and God's got a plan for it and leaning into that. I don't know. That fires me up. That's a really cool perspective. And the fact that, I don't know, you found that on your own through outside sources and through Jordan Peterson and being there for other people and recognizing other people in the heart of a tragedy and putting your emotions aside. Uh, that's like an amazing quality, man. That's such a
Yeah.
cool thing.
I was going to say it's like it's one thing to listen to Jordan Peterson and take in the wisdom, but you did it. Like you applied it in real life in one of the hardest scenarios that could be put in front of you, and that's super admirable and something that not many people do. And I think it'll carry over into so many other things you do in your life, because you're able to you were able to put into effect something that's really hard to do in a really difficult situation.
Yeah, it's definitely I remember, like, that was kind of one of the first things I thought about was like, I'm to be honest with you, I'm a very, like, anybody that knows me can tell you I'm not a super emotional person. I'm very, very like analytical. So the moment I found out, just obviously immediately shock. But like the first thing that your mind goes to is like, what can I do about it? So that was kind of like one of the first things that I thought about. Um, and yeah, I'm just grateful to have like been exposed to him and a lot of the stuff that he's talked about over the years. But definitely has not been an easy thing. It's not even something that I would say I've done a great job at, but it's definitely having the goal to be there for other people during a tragedy, and being there for other people too can be being there for yourself. Like I've noticed, like it's made me at times I can just get very irritable and angry, and that's not good for other people. So I didn't recognize that, and had to definitely went to therapy, to try and get whatever benefits I could from that. um, but yeah, it's a tough it's a tough thing without a doubt. But having that goal in mind of just right, bearing the burden of existence is
Yeah.
all you can do.
And it's for me, it's the same feeling I felt when I first met you too. But it's you're inspirational to me because we all feel like we have our challenges, but the way you carry yourself in the face of the challenges that you did face with your brother overdosing, you know, puts things in perspective for me. And appreciate that about you. And I think that's something that, all our listeners can take. And obviously, I think just hearing the way you carry yourself and how you go about life and the way you do things, is definitely inspirational for me. So even though you're a young guy still in college, you're for sure a huge inspiration.
Well, thank you. That means a lot. But yeah, I tell everybody the most impactful thing I ever heard in my life was take on as much responsibility as you can and then manage it the best that you can.
Dude,
Straight
that's such a cool perspective shift too. Because I think Max was kind of saying the same thing, but like, do you see it in your everyday life of like maybe I don't know. That's like I feel like it checks me when I'm, a little annoyed with somebody. I'm driving down the road or something. It's like, hey man, calm down. Like there's other stuff going on. There's bigger burdens to bear that like we are so spoiled in everyday life. Like did that change your mindset going forward? Obviously you talk about like in the gym, thinking about, every single day showing up. But like how about your day-to-day life with relationships and stuff? Do you just feel like some of the little unimportant things are unimportant, or like how did that change?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I'm gonna be honest, it's not something I've thought about that much, but it definitely has affected my day-to-day relationships. I'd say like the biggest thing that it's made me think about more is just like being grateful for the time that you have with people that you really care about and being cognizant of it. Because you never know like when it can be the last time you're with, and that sounds so cliche, but it is. And just trying, you have to always, you know, when you're with people, if you do have, if you lose your temper, if somebody does something that really, pisses you off, if it's, especially somebody that you care about, like, don't leave it on, a bad note. Sometimes like there's times where like you're 100% in the right about something with somebody that you care about. Like if they're listening to this, they're going to laugh, but with my parents, like I've gotten into arguments with them about stuff before. I'm like, I know I'm right about this, but it's simply not worth the fight and getting into it. So picking your battles for sure, but just appreciating that time you have with people. Like I'm still fortunate enough to be really close with a lot of my guys from high school, and like they came down this weekend for my birthday. I'll be 21 in a couple of days, so they came down to hang out.
Birthday.
Thank you, I appreciate that. But they came down, to hang out for my birthday, and I was sitting at dinner with everybody, and I'm thinking, I'm like, I don't know how many more of these opportunities I'm going to have where all of us are together, in one place. God forbid anything happens to them like it did my brother, but just appreciating and being in the moment with people, and definitely putting the freaking phone down and trying not to look at that when you're with people, and just, become genuinely interested in what they've got going on.
Yeah, a lot of wisdom right there. I don't really have anything to add to that. That's like, I think you have a lot of wisdom to share with people, and heck, this is stuff like I enjoy hearing for myself. I'm over here taking notes.
That means a lot coming from you, Max. That definitely does.
Yeah, dude, that's so inspiring. That's sweet. I think it's unfortunate circumstances, obviously, and all that, but I don't know. I think I could take a lot away from just hearing your perspective on that and being able to see the way you've dealt with that. And I think that's cool. I'd encourage you to share your story, man. I don't know how much you share that with people and stuff, but I got the chills listening to all that from you.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah, this is honestly one of the very few times I've ever kind of talked about my perspective on the situation, and it's been coming up on a year now. It's kind of surreal to think about it, but I'm just, at the end of the day, I'm grateful that I found, a lot of the stuff that Jordan Peterson talks about, and I have a lot else that goes into that too. When I first started listening to him, I'll tell you all this little story too, because I feel like it's relevant and impactful. And one of the things that really got me interested in him is one of my good friends from high school. He when I first started listening to Jordan Peterson, hearing that idea of taking on responsibility, and one of the other things that he says, and if you listen to him for a while, you've heard it before, is a good goal isn't being as happy as you possibly can, but being the strongest person at your father's funeral, which is kind of a morbid idea, but after going through, not my father, but my brother, um, it's spot on. But around the same time I heard that, one of my good friends from high school actually lost his father. Um, Very short term thing. But I remember watching him get up in front of like everybody that we'd grown up with, just the whole town, and give a lot of people spoke that day, but he gave to date the most moving, like impactful speech I've ever heard. Um, so if he's listening, I've told him before that had such a great impact on my life. So um, just seeing that like really put me on the course of thinking the way that I think now. And it's the whole, I ended up speaking at my brother's funeral too. And that was the whole reason. I was like, if one person can be impacted the same way that I was from listening to him, then it's worth the trouble of doing that. And that was the hardest thing I've ever done, man. Oh my gosh. I hate public speaking to begin with. And then to think like, oh my gosh, like me, everybody thinks of me as some very like super unemotional guy. I'm like, oh, I'm definitely going to get up and cry in front of all these people. But um, I got through it, broke down in tears after, but it was worth doing it. I think my brother would be proud of me for it.
For sure. You did it. You lived what you've learned, which you bore that responsibility of speaking and did the best you can. And I'm sure you did. I'm sure you did have an impact on people.
I hope so.
So that's amazing too. I didn't know that either. And that's a cool thing to do because it's like you lean into the scary thing that you don't want to do, but you feel like drawn to do it and like it's your purpose to do it. And you've touched on it a little bit, but like, what do you think about purpose now? Like purpose with your life, purpose with, because that's a tricky question. I think every human being wrestles with.
Yeah.
But yeah, how do you think about that now?
Yeah. I'm glad you asked that because that's something I think about a lot. And I have conversations with people about this a lot too. Um, I really think that purpose, meaning, fulfillment, happiness, whatever term you want to use for it, like what everybody is ultimately looking for at the end of the day. Um, I think a lot of it is to be found in responsibility and cleaning up your little corner of the world. I think a lot of people, I think it's very rare that this one thing, like a career or like a job or something, just manifests itself to you, and you're like, oh, this is what I'm going to do with the rest of my life. I don't think that happens for 99% of people. I think most people end up, that really find their fulfillment, find it by just saying like, hey, this seems like a good career path. I'm going to do that. And then along the way, they look at little things and see how to make little parts of the world better. Jordan Peterson, it's like start by cleaning up your room. That's something I do to this day. I make my bed every day. Go me.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I think purpose and fulfillment is something that you find along the way. You don't see it on a map and then work your way towards it. I think you kind of find it by just consistently looking for ways that you can take on responsibility and make the world better.
Yep.
So the way that I kind of am thinking about it right now is like, I want to be a real estate developer. Not a very popular thing, especially in today's day and age. But the whole reason I wanted to do it is because I'm in one of the fastest growing counties in the country. I've seen the way that it's had a positive impact on people's lives. I mean, it's development kind of is the way that communities are formed physically, at least, and to be able to have like an impact on that and do it responsibly for sure is something that I'm really passionate about. But along the way, I'd like to get to a point in life where I can help mentor people like my brother who just don't really have a path out, because ultimately I think, and I don't want to speak out of turn here or offend anybody who is going through depression, but from my experience with seeing my brother, and he agreed with me on this because it's something we talked about after he got sober, like a huge issue, especially I feel like with young guys in today's generation, is they're not being told like, look for purpose, take on responsibility. They're almost being told the opposite of that a lot of times. But I feel like a lot of people who suffer with depression, at least once again, qualify with what I've seen in my experience, don't have that sense of purpose. When my brother was initially started using drugs, he was, in high school, didn't care a ton about his grades, just enough to get by, wasn't really playing a ton of sports or anything, was just kind of working out. But didn't have like a super strong sense of purpose or any idea of what direction he was going. So I think that's kind of what led him to kind of feel bad about himself and, be like down in the dumps all the time. Once again, oversimplifying it. I know I'm going to offend some people saying it that way, but um, when he got sober, he during rehab, he found a lot of that purpose. A lot of it came from reading the Bible, reading lots of books. Man's Search for Meaning is a great book that I would recommend. If anybody's going through it, going just feeling down, Man's Search for Meaning is one of the most impactful books anybody could ever read. But, he got out, immediately came out, woke up at the same time every day, went to the gym, 3 walks a day, morning sunlight, the whole Andrew Huberman routine, got a job. He was a plumber, started plumbing. He was a senior in high school and was working. Just had this really strong sense of fulfillment. And granted, he was also on antidepressants. I think that's definitely something people need to consider because it can make a difference. I wasn't big on them until I saw that he, really needed them. I think if you've tried all these other things and you're still experiencing it, that's the time to do it. But he, the depression when my brother died, I didn't see that. I just saw somebody who was struggling with an addiction. So I'd say that purpose is you have to have it to exist in the world and to not find yourself on those dark corners of your conscience that lead people to do things like use drugs. And I think you find it by just, taking a look at your life and being like, I could do X, Y, and Z better. Why don't I do it and see where that takes me? And maybe along the way, help somebody else do it too.
Yeah, that's super well said.
Yeah, I think that's awesome, man. I think that's super cool, and you're wise beyond your years, man. You're, I like Max said, I love what you're talking about.
When
And
do you turn 21? Oh, sorry,
yeah,
Mike.
no, you're good. Go ahead.
Wednesday.
Wednesday. All right. So I was gonna say you're the wisest 20-year-old I know, and as soon as you turn 21, you'll still be the wisest 21-year-old I know.
I appreciate that. I 100% attribute it to podcasts and Jordan Peterson.
Yeah, you can attribute it all you want, but you got to go out. A lot of people listen to a lot of podcasts and then they don't. It's easy to talk the talk or listen to it, but to go actually walk the walk is a different deal.
Well, I appreciate that.
One more question that I got for you, and that I'd love to hear your perspective on is like, so did you talk to your brother a lot throughout this process? And I'm assuming that the answer to that is yes. I don't know. But how did you think about those conversations when maybe you didn't know the right thing to say or you didn't know the right thing to do?
Go
ahead.
That's the toughest part. Like it really is because I guess I'll give you a little bit more detail. Like my brother started using and at least hard drugs. I mean, he always kind of had smoked weed and like nicotine and that kind of stuff. But once he started really using pills, which is what he died of, it was in about September of October of 2022. He ended up going to rehab very quickly after that. He once again, my brother was not like a shithead drughead by any means. My brother was very, very disciplined and dedicated. He was far more disciplined than I will ever will be. I mean, I remember him carrying a jug of milk around at school and the teachers coming up to me and being like, "Why does your brother have like a jug of milk?" I'm like, "Because he's bolting." Like, what?
Yeah.
Why else would have like yeah, he was just dialed in with all of that, but let him to use drugs. He came to my parents very quickly. We're fortunate enough financially to put him in one of the best rehab programs for somebody of his age. It was in Tennessee. Highly would recommend it if anybody's going through it. It's called Arts Academy. Very, very good for people that are below the age of 18. When he went to that, we didn't have. I actually didn't even know he was going when it happened. I was at school, and my parents didn't. I won't go into how I found out about it, but this wasn't my parents' fault or anything. I kind of found out in a roundabout way. And he had to go to detox for a week first before he went to rehab. So I came home when he got out of detox and just talked to him. At that point, having no idea of how to communicate with somebody who is an addict or anything like that. and just being like, hey man, like, you know, all the usual stuff. Like, I'm here for you. Like, I just want to see you get better. Like, you know, whatever you need me to do, I'm there for you. Um, when he went off to rehab, he was there for about 60 days. We couldn't really have any contact with him. We could write letters, and he would get them once a week. So I wrote him. He was there for 60 days. I wrote him one letter. We were able to go visit him once. So during that time, like, just asking him in the letter, I kind of just tried to provide, you know, words of guidance and like be a good older brother as much as I could in that situation. But when we went to see him, you know, I just asked him. I'm like, look, man, like, what do I need to tell you when you're, you know, under the influence? Like, how can I help you there for you when you're not and you're struggling? Uh, I think that's really important. If you have somebody that's struggling with addiction or struggling with depression, just be like, you know, how do I communicate with you most effectively? Because they're only going to know what works. And I'll say another thing too. It's one of the scariest parts about addiction is there's like two people. Um, it's nothing like I've ever seen in my life. It was when my brother was under the influence or when he was, you know, in withdrawals. Like, it was scary, um, genuinely scary. So you got to know how to deal with that person too. Um, Usually that person requires tough love. The When you're, you know, person you know as an addict comes to you looking for help, then that's the time to be compassionate. But you know, that's something I definitely think I could have done a better job of, and I definitely would not say that I know a lot about it, but just trying to ask them how they need to be talked to when they're asking them that question when they're in the right state of mind. Obviously, I think is, you know, one of the best things you can do. But once my brother got out, um, he, like I said, was a completely different person. Was super on top of everything that he needed to do, reading lots of books. And then it was talking like we were friends, but he didn't like to talk about the addiction necessarily, and I think a lot of that has to do with uh, a big thing that they use is the 12 steps. It's usually for alcoholics, but it's for drug addicts as well. So I mean, I'm telling him, look, I'm here to talk about it whenever you want. I'm not going to judge you. Like, I'm, you know, proud of you more than anything. But if you ever need to talk, let me know. But he would have those conversations in the AA meetings. He went to 3 meetings a day, and that's what was super helpful for him. But yeah, I don't know. I wish I could give you a better answer to that, but it's something that
I think you gave a great answer and a lot of wisdom in the just ask, which I think is, you know, that is again wise beyond your years. Because sometimes if you're trying to figure out the perfect thing to say in a difficult situation, the best thing to do is just ask.
Yeah, and you think like for me, like you know, for the longest time when he was, you know, because he would have stuff in high school that wasn't as big a deal that I would be like, being the classic older brother, like, dude, you're an idiot, like, get your shit together, like, what are you doing? Um, that works for me because that's how I was raised with sports and parenting. But for him, it didn't work as well. It was like, you know, he looked up to me as much as I looked up to him. Um, and hearing that was more of like put him down further than picking him up. So when he was in the right state of mind, like the way I would usually approach it would just be like, you know, hey, like, I can tell you've been acting a little off. Because honestly, when you're around somebody like that all the time, you're, especially if it's a family member, you're wondering like, are they using? Because you can't always tell. They'll hide it from you. You won't know when they first start using again necessarily, but there'll be little things that you'll pick up on. And in retrospect, it's a lot easier. But in the moment when it comes across, it's hard to ask that person like, "Are you using again?" Because, you know, they're probably not going to tell you if they are. So I mean, that's another tough conversation you have to approach. But
Yeah.
You're getting maybe a little off topic now, but
No,
there's a lot to it. But at the end of the day, like, really just asking the person when they're in the right state of mind, how do I communicate most effectively with you?
like that's cool too, man. Like it seems like, I don't know, you're never gonna probably always say the right thing or the most perfect thing in any difficult situation. But I also think that people feel like when you're genuinely caring about them. And so like coming there and just being there, I'm sure meant the world to him. And then just from what you've said, sounds like you said a lot of really awesome and wise things. But I don't know, I think about that a lot too, where especially not even kind of compared to your situation, but in a sports world, seeing people down and seeing how like these awesome coaches like pick their athletes up and how they individualize it and know, when that person needs a hug or when they need a kick in the butt. I think it's something really interesting to me. And there's a lot of wisdom in figuring that out. And it sounds like you navigated that very well without ever, I don't know, you didn't get taught that. And so I don't know, I think that's really cool. And I'm sure it meant a lot more to your brother than you ever really realized. And I bet that's an awesome skill that you'll use the rest of your life in being there for people when they need it.
I certainly hope something I've tried to work on more, because it's definitely historically not been my strong suit. I'm usually the tough guy.
Tough. Well, sometimes it is necessary, but also you have to have the wisdom to know when it's not. That's coaching and leadership, which I think, Ryan, is what you're talking about. Someone with your experiences can provide a lot of wisdom in that. And I also think it's like something I've realized over the past couple of years in my life, but some of my absolute favorite people are recovered addicts because they just have this wisdom. They've had to look at themselves so intensely and do so much work on themselves that they just have kind of a different level of wisdom. And have you guys read the book Dopamine Nation? Have you read that?
No.
It's really good. It's about kind of like the modern plight and how we struggle with excess now instead of scarcity, and because of that, like addicts are like modern, the modern wise people. They're the modern shamans. They're like the ones who have been to the edge and are back. So there's a ton of wisdom, and people who have dealt with a lot of addiction. There's a lot of wisdom you can learn there, and I think it's clear with you that a lot of that wisdom is present in such a young man.
Well, I appreciate that. I love talking about the whole dopamine system, and I really think it's related to like everything that we've talked about so far: addiction, purpose, consistency. I think when you get to the root of all those issues, it really does have to do a lot with neurochemicals, especially dopamine. But that's a whole other conversation.
Whole other one, but it's true.
Logan, you're the man. This was awesome. I really enjoyed this. I really appreciate you, opening up and speaking to these difficult things with us. And I think we got to have you back on and talk a little more lighthearted about how your competition goes and stuff in the future. And want to pick your brain more on that stuff too, because I think you got a wealth of knowledge with that. But really appreciate your insights, your unique experience. I got my homework, Man Search for Meaning and Dopamine Nation. I got to get those books. And thank you so much, man.
Yeah, thank you, Logan. Wisest 20-year-old, soon to be 21-year-old on the planet.
Yeah, thank you guys so much. Hopefully, my story can help somebody else out there a little bit. So thank you guys for giving me a platform to share with people.
Of course, inspiration to us.
Absolutely.